she would always bring me this poppy seed cake for Easter without her telling me anything. The moment you try it, it's like million times better than any other poppy cake I ever had in my life. And it goes to ingredients, right? The woman makes it the same way, the bakery down the street makes it. But she goes to Wisconsin, she gets everything organic. She gets, stuff that actually is of quality. And once you get stuff of quality, to your point, how do you know? Well, you know pretty quickly. And I think the same thing happens, if the ingredients of your ministry.
Oh, that's good.
It's well put, if it's of quality, the quality of disciples is going to improve. And how will you measure it? The generosity of the disciples.
Welcome to Magnified Ministry Podcast, the podcast dedicated to inspiring, encouraging, and equipping parish leaders to build thriving missionary communities in today's rapidly changing world. This is the Magnified Ministry Podcast. Welcome back to the Magnified Ministry Podcast. I'm your host, Marco, joined by Father Peter. And Welcome back. And it's the end of the Lenten series. It's always bittersweet.
It's kind of crazy because we have to record stuff ahead, right? So it's crazy.
Don't give our secrets. No, we record on Wednesdays, the day before this launches. What are you talking about?
But it's like Lent doesn't even start, and we already have talked about how preparing for Lent, measuring Lent, all that stuff. So I like for all of you who are parish ministers, you exactly understand what I'm saying. Like, the life of the parish is so wonderful, and on the flip side, it's like so strange because we always live in the future, right? We are celebrating Christmas, planning for Lent. We are celebrating
Easter probably in the summer,
planning for summer programming. So you always have to be like 6 months at least ahead in order to be prepared and ready. And it's when the season comes, it's sometimes hard to enjoy the season because you've been working on it for so long, planning and all that stuff. So it's just life. But we grateful you are with us for the conclusion of our Lent prep episode.
And I think one of the challenges I will put to you, our listeners, is to try to figure out when exactly we recorded this episode. We'll leave you some breadcrumbs, as they say.
Oh, I like
figure
that.
out
That's
if you
good.
can know.
That's very nice of you, Marco.
But just know we're living in the present time. See if you picked up on that. So one of the things that you talked about, Father Peter, is obviously parish life's very busy. Mm-hmm. Obviously, living in the moment is absolutely necessary in ministry because when people come, we've got to be present to them. We've got to be here to minister in the moment. Yeah. But we have to be thinking ahead, right? Because it's really difficult to operate in a world where we're just trying to react. Yeah. And so in order to be effective in ministering to people and engaging the next generation, we have to be thinking ahead. Well, that leads to our conversation for today, right? We're not going to be talking about what or who or why. We're going to be talking about how do we know that all the efforts and all the work that we did was actually impactful. And I think I want us to frame this conversation not in terms of numbers and performance and busyness, but thinking about fruitfulness, right? And so could you maybe talk a little bit about how you as a pastor, you and your staff and your parish leaders think about the idea of measuring impact through that lens of fruitfulness, not just necessarily performance? Because I think it's an important distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hear it a lot at Father Malan's book on Divine Renovation. Marco, one thing that I think you and I have seen in research, and we clearly have seen it in the Archdiocese in our time when we worked together for the Archdiocese of Chicago, kind of overseeing the spiritual renewal efforts, was that the parishes really spend way too much time on one-offs, and they've done a beautiful job on one-time events. But the one-time events barely make disciples, right? They usually don't make disciples. Why? Because they don't shape people's hearts. They're not something that people then don't get to know each other. There's no spiritual journey. There's just, even if it's impactful to some extent, you come, you participate in something, and then you go home, and there's no venue for you to unpack it, to make it yours, right? So Jesus enters into the story of our life through what we do, and that requires the unpacking, right? I think the behavioral scientists are saying that the learning doesn't happen in us just perceiving something new, but in reflecting on something new, right? And the same thing happens with our spiritual lives. And I think what we've seen with Mark and research is that parishes would spend a lot of time doing this one big event, but there will be no follow-up to it. There will be no way for people to unpack the experience and say, oh, you just had this powerful experience. What did you learn about God? What did you believe? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about your community? And then when can you take it from there? So if you learn something new about God, or that affirms something about God, or challenge some of your ideas about God, what do you do with it next? And so I think that's really important in the Lenten season, right? Because I was just looking at this piece of research that says that even in pre-Christian world or post-Christian world, no matter which part of the world you live in, that people who are lapsed Christians or lapsed Catholics, they still are very much drawn to seasons of a deeper impact like Lent, meaning that they actually will show up to some Lenten things versus they would not come to anything in the summer or spring, right? So there's something cultural and there's some inherited belief that God can do something if you show up. And so the question for us as parish leaders is like, okay, so what are we going to do with that when they actually show up?
Right. And we talked a lot about some of those ideas, right? We talked about being intentional with Ash Wednesday and being intentional with the invitations after that, thinking about ways to create a space for belonging in a season of reflection with the Friday fish fries and the Friday Stations of the Cross, followed with soup, but doing stations in a way that's accessible to many people throughout the day. And then also thinking about prayer in a different way and incorporating different prayer opportunities throughout the season of Lent. So I think my question to you would be, if someone were to come and ask your team to do a reflection on Lent, and ask them, tell me how you know that this Lent was, and I hate using the word successful, right? Because that's, again, impactful, right? Like, how would you go about answering that question?
I think it's all about encounter, right? I for some reasons, the word that God kind of awakened my heart for 2026 is the encounter. I have this deep belief that God wants deeper encounter with me individually, with us as a community, with the church at large. I think it's a year of encounter. And so I think that's how I would measure it. Are people encountering Jesus Christ in different groups, right?
So how do you practically bring that to life, right? Because you could say, well, we had 100 people come to this thing. I'm like, but does that really tell us that people encounter? Like, how do you think about unpacking that? And I know it's not easy.
No, but there are ways you can measure it. I think there's three things that come to my mind as I think about the question of encounter and the difference this season can make in people's lives. Number one is simply, are you offering things that will meet people where your people are, right? So it's the knowledge of your people. So who is in your pews? And through that, you can just do a very quick search and recognizing what is that generation looking for when it comes to God? What are the questions around God? So number one is make sure that you answer the questions that people have. Secondly, I believe that it's very important, again, to have not one of programming, but to have a journey on which you invite people and the journey in which you support people in encountering God and encountering one another, right? That Jesus started the church so we don't have to be alone. So this is our opportunity to bring people together. And number three, which is important, is the conversations, right? I know that you and I had this really a powerful experience over the years when we started noticing how different the conversations are, right? And you start perceiving, like, I remember when early on in early stages here at St. Clement, we would do encounter series on Sunday, and we would ask people, in addition to homily preached by us, to have a reflection on their own spiritual experience. And it was like pulling your teeth the first few times. And then, because we run so many alpha and beta courses and we normalize talking about Jesus, now it's no problem. Like it takes literally no time because people are like, yeah, I can talk about my relationship with Jesus. So from people who listen to relationships of others, we now start forming people who have their own stories of faith. And that's the most powerful thing, right? As people who have their own faith stories, they now, the belief in Jesus is not theory to them now. They can put their finger on saying, this is how Jesus is at work in my life. And those are really important to measure.
I think those are good. And then some of the things I've observed as well, right? Like obviously you can look at numbers of people that are attending something, and that's always, I think, a tricky balance, right? In church and ministry is over indexing on, we had like 50 people or 100 people. Like that's good. We should give praise to that, but that's not the most important thing, right? I think the question comes down to what happens to those people, right, after they come to a Lenten reconciliation service, or like, and I think one of the pieces, as you're talking, some of the impact, we may not see it in the current moment or in the current season, right? Like, I think some of it, you have to realize that you're planting seeds, right? Mm-hmm. And the impact that you may have in someone's life may take 6, 12, 18 months to really flourish.
But that's why I think measuring is important. I know you don't like the numbers much, but I think on the flip side, what I've seen in my ministry over the last 17 years is that people don't measure anything. And so you always do the same reconciliation service. And you say, oh, yeah, no, there's 14 people. Well, if you have a parish of 4,000 and 14 people come to reconciliation service,
there's something
that
wrong.
tells you are not, you've been doing what you've always done, but that doesn't meet people where they are. So I think there is an importance of measure. Like we measure our Sunday attendance every week. We don't measure it to say how great we are. We measure it because what we want to see is what we do at that Mass, specifically with music, with welcome, with preaching, with the focus. Every Mass is focused a little bit differently, right? From high-end Mass with, incense to praise and worship liturgy. And we want to measure, like, are people responding to it? Is it because it's people's resources, right? For getting the choirs and musicians and so forth. So actually measuring, I think, is important. You don't want to just focus on measuring, but you want to measure. Because if you don't measure, how do you know you're successful, right? If something, if you offer this service and 100 people show up, boy, that tells you that was the right topic. That already will tell you probably have some work to do in actually staying with that versus starting something new. And if you get 10 people, then you would say, well, this was a misstep. We didn't listen to our people.
And I think that's a great nuance, right? Is recognizing that the numbers are there to help you identify, give you a sense of like what's working and what's not working, right? Because measuring spiritual engagement or depth of encounter, like these are things that are very like up there, right? Like how do you measure that? And the best way we have is imperfect, is how many people are coming, and then also being in tune to the conversations that people are having, and you see that over time, right? Like you really start to see people change. And I've always struggled, right, with this, like, how do you know? And it's just like, you just know, right? Like you it's one of those things, like, you know it when you see it, right? You know it when you see it, you know when you hear it. And it's when you talk about culture, when you talk about any of that fluffy stuff, it's really hard to measure. But it's something that you just feel, you just sense. But I think it's helpful, to your point about having some hard quantitative numbers to help you make decisions about what you keep. And Maureen used to always say this, like, what do you start, what do you stop, and what do you continue? And I think you have to keep reflecting on that year in and year out, season after season, month after month, because that helps you deploy your resources, limited resources, in a better way, right?
In a more responsible way.
Yeah.
We had someone who worked with us for a number of years and is a great minister. Her name is Marta. And Marta she would always bring me this poppy seed cake for Easter. And her friend makes it. And without her telling me anything, the moment you try it, it's like a million times better than any other poppy cake I ever had in my life. And it goes to ingredients, right? The woman makes it the same way, the bakery down the street makes it. But she goes to Wisconsin, she gets everything organic. She gets, stuff that actually is of quality. And once you get stuff of quality, to your point, how do you know? Well, you know pretty quickly. And I think the same thing happens, if the ingredients of your ministry.
Oh, that's good.
That's good. Well put, if it's of quality, the quality of disciples is going to improve. And how will you measure it? The generosity of the disciples. 3 ways, right? The generosity in them stepping in more into faith. So like the more people are converted, the more they should participate in the sacramental life of the church. Are there more people on Sunday? Are there more people participating in courses? Are there more people into reconciliation? All that stuff. So that's one. Second is, are people more generous with their time and their money? Right?
Time, talent,
so,
treasure.
So are they willing to support your church more? And also because that they see it as their mission now. And are they stepping in being leaders, right? Because the bigger your church becomes, the more leaders you need. And the third one is service to the poor. That is incredibly important. If people are transformed, they will be transformed in a way that you would be able to clearly see a difference in their generosity. And I have to say, again, we here at St. Clement, I've been so fortunate, Father Tom Hickey, who we actually have to invite on this podcast.
Oh, we should. That'd be great.
But Father Tom started this Clement Commits here, 20-some years ago. And that's basically, we give 10% of our ordinary income to those in need. And we do it even in the times when our budget was in trouble. We still never sacrifice giving to the poor. And I think it's much easier for me as a pastor to say, we give 10%. Would you consider getting there? It might take you 20 years to get there, but this is the journey. This is the goal. And secondly is, would you step into serving the poor? Would you partner with us in making a difference in the city? And the disciples will, because the disciples have a heart of mercy, because they experience the heart of mercy.
And I think what's neat is we're talking about capturing the footsteps, right, of a life of transformation that takes time. But I think I'll land this plane on to like, how do you think about Lent? But you're talking about when hearts are transformed, when people go deeper into conversion and they reorient their life towards the Lord, they become much more generous and intentional with their time. Right? They want to be with the Lord more, right? In worship, in learning, in community, right? They also want to give in generosity of their time, talent, and treasure, right? They want to support the mission. They want to support the ministry. They want to give of their resources on Sundays and during the week to help others experience the same thing they've had. And they also want to serve the less fortunate, right? And make sure that that's something that we're intentional about. Right. And those are things you actually can start measuring, right? You measure the outcomes. At any
point, that's right.
And so you may be thinking like, how am I ever gonna know that my things are having an impact? It's like, well, A, it takes time, but B, there are things that you can start to look at, right? How an individual and the groups of individuals and a community of individuals starts working together. And I think the encouragement for you all is this Lent, why not make it the first Lent that you start looking at some numbers in a new way, right? Maybe pay attention to how many people come on Ash Wednesday. Write it down. Maybe do it by hour, right? So then you understand a little bit about, like, are people coming in the morning? Are they coming in the afternoon?
That's brilliant, yeah.
Are they coming in the evening? As you think about things that you're doing during Lent, just keep track of how many people come and the type of people that come, right? Because maybe that'll help you understand, am I attracting a particular demographic? Is there a group of people that I see on Sundays that I don't see here? Or is there a people that I see out the street that I don't see here, right? And our encouragement to you would be this, is don't focus so much about raising the numbers. Focus on what the numbers are raising. Because it's about setting a baseline and understanding, like, okay, these many people came. Why? Like, who came? Why? And who did we not see and why? And then that will help you start thinking about creating the environment, the space for encounter, right? Like, this
and
is
removing the barriers.
This is all about removing barriers.
So often we are just even unaware of the barriers we have. We've been talking here with our team here at St. Clement, for example, that what we noticed over the last few years is how many, because where we are in the city, and we have so many very large medical centers, and a lot of our parishioners are doctors and nurses. Medical professionals, and they work long hours. And what we noticed over the last few years is how many people run into the church after the 7 p.m. Mass on Ash Wednesday at like 8:30. Like, can I please still get ashes? Can I? And like, they never had quality experience because they always work. So we're talking about like, okay, well, why don't we do 8:30 service? We don't have to do a Mass, but why don't we have a service of ashes? And offer them like thank them.
Yeah.
With a gift that they're coming at 8:30, like they're exhausted. They've been just working for 12 hours in the hospital.
Yeah.
So I think once you start observing those things, some things become very clear, and it might take you a season or two to actually get there. But to your point, I think it's really important to step in and say, okay, who is here, but who is not here,
Right?
And how do we have this? Like it goes back to something we talked about a number of weeks ago, like. You have to treat your church as your home, and everybody who comes as the most welcome guest. And so you have to say to yourself, are they feeling at home?
Yep.
Are they comfortable? And will they return?
Yep. And I think the question is, how do you get people beyond the pastor thinking in that way?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's why we are harping on this idea of measuring, because again, it's not about where we're at today. It's like, what's the process and what is it helping us do, right? Because if you take away from this conversation, like, oh, all I should do is like keep track of how many people come. Yeah. It's like, well, that's not going to really help you, right? Like, you really have to understand, what does 50 mean? Who are those 50? Why are they here? And what do people see? What do the people think? And then you start paying attention, right? Like, this is all about paying more attention and being more attuned as to who are the people that are starting to walk through that door, right?
And I think it's as simple as getting 20 people who are in your councils, who are your leaders, and saying, you know what, your job will be like a secret shopper, right? Your job will be to just observe. You'll just observe for a month. Yeah. And then take notes. And then we'll meet together and you will send us the bullet points of what you've learned. And then we together will then discern, like, okay, let's take it to prayer, because it's all about God's plan, not our plan. Let's take it to prayer. Let's see what God does with it. And then God will always do something. God always honors movement, right? So God will always do something with it. So I think you get to your point. You cannot do it yourself. You get the group of leaders. You explain to them why you want to do it, what your goals are. You empower them with some basic information, and then you deploy them for a season. You bring them together. You listen to each other. You start praying. Maybe you have 3 prayer sessions and listening sessions. And then out of that, you start drawing a plan of saying, okay, those are the 3 things God put on our heart collectively as a community. We think God wants us to do those things.
And I think that's key. Start small. Right? Don't make it a 50, you're going to Uber index, oh, there's like 20 things wrong.
No, you can't.
There are many things wrong in the church. It's the church. There's always going to be something that's wrong and that you can fix. Start 1, 2, 3. And when you're talking about challenges and barriers, I tell you what, I can't find a parking spot at St. Clement anymore on a Sunday mass. That's my own personal barrier. But if you know somebody that's trying to sell a parking lot in Lincoln Park, let us know.
Marco will buy it.
I will buy it. I can't seem to find a place to park. This has been great to talk about Lent. Can we give people a preview of what's coming next?
Yes, we are very excited. So we will invite you to a 4-week series when we will interview groups of young adults. We are very excited about it. Why? Because I think, again, God is stirring something in the hearts of next generation. We've learned from Barna, this is the most open generation. We've seen at Clemens literally thousands of them coming. We've seen incredible movement of the Holy Spirit through this open generation. And we just think God is doing something with them. And so we talk so much about how to serve them, how to engage them, but we thought it would be powerful to hear it firsthand from them. So we'll invite you to a 4-week of listening and learning and reflecting on the needs, the desires, and the pastoral focus of Gen Zs. And together we'll continue to learn from them. So then we'll take it on our conversation into next steps of kind of unpacking it and making it lasting. So we cannot wait to join you for those 4-week conversations.
We can't wait. Impressive individuals. I tell you what, if I was like them when I was 20,
you're right.
The world would be a different place. Anyway, have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, friends.